One. Welcome back. I'm Alfred Lambremont Weber, and I'm here today with John Lasheras, um, who has a very deep story and some very unusual allegations and with some very deep implications. And I want to bring John Lasheras into this public platform with his allegations. Uh, and John, so please come forward and introduce yourself with your disclaimers, and please share your story with our public. Thank you.
Can I just ask Alfred, kind of briefly, can I just introduce myself a little bit?
Yeah, please. That's yes, as
Okay.
part of the thing.
Okay, I'm a self-described futurist, a singularitarian, somebody who believes in the concept of the technological singularity, which is a point where artificial general intelligences will seek to overcome mankind, not in terms of technologically overcoming them, but helping mankind in terms of increasing their intelligences and helping us produce for society. I'm also a self-described scientist. I'm a self-published author. I published several books on Wattpad for free and also on Amazon as well too. I've written about 3 books this year, or 4 books this year. I think I've lost count already. And I've written about 5 research papers as well too. And two to three of them were in the past month or so. And these are about like 5 to 6,000 page research papers. I used to be a university student at Rutgers University until I ran out of money and I started looking for work. So I became a data entry specialist at a company called My Distributors in 2018. And I soon became a data analyst, and my pay scale went up as a function of my increased ability to perform at work and taking this nootropic stack that my corporation, Singularitarian Technologies Corporation, developed called the Limitless Potential Stack, which is a nootropic stack that has increased my intelligence from 124 basis points, IQ basis points on average, to about 132. And my highest I've tested this year in 2019 has been between 145 and 160 IQ basis points. So I've been doing fairly well with that sort of nootropic stack and the other sort of pharmaceutical formulations that my company has come up with as well. We also have like physical design mechanisms and sort of patents that I have that are patent pending. I don't have the money for the patents. I'm a very poor and destitute kind of person, but I'm not very poor of soul, and I'm a very sort of rich. I have a sort of rich emotional character, and this is where this kind of story all comes in. So I'm going to read this brief disclaimer to you about what I allege to be the Facebook conspiracy, in which all of the accused parties here are innocent until proven guilty. And I wrote this myself. So these are merely allegations that will be further explained and substantiated in passing. And I'd like to make an addendum to that. So this evidence is highly circumstantial, except for a few key pieces of evidence that is provided by witnesses in terms of testimony. And that can be subject to hearsay as well too, and subject to circumstantiality. But not all cases are predicated on the fact that circumstantiality is going to be something that hinders the case in terms of providing a substantial sort of means into gathering evidence or getting search warrants. So I'm going to start with the beginning of the story, which is back on October 26, 2016. So I had submitted an application to work as a technical sourcer and recruiter at Oculus VR, a subsidiary of Facebook at the time, now Facebook Virtual and Augmented Reality Labs. My wife's parents, her name is Isabella Santiago. I currently don't know where she is. I don't know what's happened to her, but we'll get to that soon. Had sold their house on October 26, 2016, and I had found this out through public records on the website truthfinder.com. The same day I was hacked by Facebook, and Facebook had figured out that my wife, I call her my wife, but she considers me to be more of her boyfriend, but I'm very, very sentimentally attached to her, and I really do love her, and I would marry her. And I do consider her more like my wife than just my girlfriend. So here I call her Isabella Lasheras, but her real formal name is Isabella Santiago. So we're not formally married, which is kind of a common thing that happens in Latino and Hispanic families. They kind of move in with one another. They don't get particularly, they don't particularly tie the knot, as it were. And so we never really met, which is an honest thing I have to admit as well too. We had an online relationship, but she was very keen on moving here. And on this day in particular, we had talked about maybe me going to Facebook if I had submitted this application and if they had accepted me. And this is what led to this sort of the story kind of cycling out of control, which I believe was which is attested to in this idea that that she was beautiful and could be useful as a sex slave. This is what Facebook had thought. And her parents, May and Adalberto Santiago, divorced in the same day, at least from what I could informally and logically deduce. And starting their divorce proceedings as May married into the Colley family, an extensive family with its background in the formation of the early internet and extensive government contracting and subcontracting, which is a direct satellite family to the Lucky family, uh, commonly known for their Oculus VR headsets, the Palmer Lucky family, his family, and which is directly 1 degree of separation away from the Zuckerberg family. So all of these families are closely tightly knit and we've woven together there in Southern California and Central California as well too. I don't know how associated they are with one another, but through this association called the Colley Family Trust, which is their kind of commingling of their businesses together in one family trust, I kind of logically deduced that they had bought out properties through their real estate ventures as well too, through other alleged co-conspirators. I don't know exactly who's complicit, but we're gonna get to that a little bit later here. So since October 26, 2016, I've been alleging that the Zuckerbergs, Luckies, Colleys, Thiels, like Peter Thiel, for example, and associated satellite families have been conspiring and actively trying to murder, sex traffic, human traffic, and commit a heinous litany of crimes. And remember, this is allegedly so. This is just my accusation of such things, and it's just there's a disclaimer that, like I said before, the people are innocent until proven guilty, and they have been trying to conspiring, actively trying to murder, sex traffic, human traffic, and commit a heinous litany of crimes, allegedly so, trying to suppress my investigation into this conspiracy where they had taken my wife as a sex slave and hostage, whether it be consensual prostitution or whatever form of sex slavery that it took. She had admitted to me, and we have this in the documents here later, that in 2017, she had reached out to me on her old Text Me Now phone number, where she had this iPod Touch where she used to talk to me for years at a time. And she said that she was being basically forced to be prostituted on the street and sell herself for opioids and marijuana. And she said that she wanted to live with me and move in with my dad and I, and we would move on with our lives. But by the time I asked her, the day that I asked her to move here, we were going to start setting up some sort of arrangements where I was going to be losing weight, going to go ahead and look for a job and start actually going forward with my life. But I was actively on risperidone, which is a kind of very sedative and intensive sedative neuroleptic for my schizoaffective disorder, which I do have. I do attest to such things. So, but she was still very interested in moving in with me, and she said that her aunt only considered her to be useful for basically her vagina, as it were. And I found that deeply offensive. She asked me if I felt like if it meant so much to me that she was prostituting herself, and I said, really, I don't care if you had sex with anybody else, if you were a prostitute. All I cared about is if she was safe, because I really loved her. So they've been trying to suppress my investigations of the conspiracy, and this is an informal affidavit which I've posted everywhere. I would like to clear up the air about this as well too. I said I became a volunteer special agent, which is kind of partially true, because I did submit an application to the FBI where I was stating that I would even work for free if they would help me on this investigation, up for a period of 2 years, where I had offered many employers the same option, whether it be federal, governmental, or private businesses, where I would work for 2 years in lieu of having 10, 15, 20 years of experience to prove myself as being an intelligent young man who's capable of doing much more than what society says that is placed upon him in terms of these standards and requirements that are set out in curriculum vitae in terms of what they're looking for in terms of employers. So I was willing to be a volunteer special agent and work for free and do investigations for up to 2 years, and then I would collect my first paychecks some 2 years later. I don't know if the governmental jobs work like that or not. I guess they're much more hardliners. They're much more strict. They want the actual experience. But a private corporation might be a little bit more willing. But then we saw what happened when I offered that to Facebook. They basically went ahead and allegedly so, I'm going to say that again, they took my wife instead and hacked me. And first they had hacked me, and then they found out that my wife was beautiful. Then they found her, and they sex trafficked her to California, back to Illinois, to Florida, and possibly to Cuba as well too, which is where Mr. Jonas Krohn, a senior vice president at Trillium Asset Management, comes in as well later. But we'll get to that in a little bit. So I was hacked by the corporation of Facebook in October of 2016, and we already spoke about that. So I found the subsidiary's president, Palmer Lucky's father. So the subsidiary here is Oculus VR. I found his number on Uber.com, a public repository for phone numbers. I spoke with him kindly, and his name is Mr. Brett Lucky. I spoke with him kindly and respectfully, asking if someone at Oculus could review my resume. I was then in the following week wiretapped, hacked, and had my GPS coordinates tracked by Facebook. And this is not an allegation that I'm attesting to as being something that I had, maybe could be. This is not something that could be disputed as being not seen, because I had actually seen this with my very own eyes. So I mean, this is an allegation where maybe the wiretapping or the actual sort of schema of how they hacked me, which is kind of extremely illogical because when I had my phone back then, my Samsung Galaxy S4, it was wiretap. It was not wiretap. It was rooted, which meant that I deleted all of the Facebook applications. I deleted all of the monitoring applications on the phone, and it was just the bare bones minimum OEM software. And there was no Facebook application on there where they could have tracked me even indirectly through some sort of tagging through, the social media platforms or even browser APIs. So basically, they had to physically find out my phone number. They had to physically find out my IP address at school or something, and then track my GPS coordinates that way. So, and I saw John Carmack and Mark Zuckerberg in Newark, New Jersey, in blue Ford F-150 trucks, which were presumably rented and could be cross-referenced to any sort of rental databases in Newark, New Jersey, or Craigslist, stuff like that, where they could have gotten blue Ford F-150s. So over the course of the next few months, my phone slowly started degrading and was rendered completely
Yeah,
inoperable.
could I jump in here?
Yes, Alfred, sure.
Uh, and I just want to jump in because you mentioned you saw who?
Oh, John Carmack, who was the former CTO of Oculus VR. He recently stepped down. He used to be the CTO for Oculus VR for about 3 or so years, and then he's now working in a contracting position for Oculus, and he wants to pursue his own general project of artificial general intelligence in terms of the development of AGI.
And you saw John Carmack in the company of who?
Mark Zuckerberg.
Mark Zuckerberg. On what date?
This would have been about a week or so after October 26th. So I'd say about November 3rd to November 4th. But my recollection is kind of fuzzy on that because
and what year?
October 2016 to November 2016. 2016, I'm sorry.
Okay, so that was right around the election.
Yes, it was. And it was also within the proximity of when these things started happening where my phone was being hacked.
Yeah,
my wife suddenly stopped talking to me.
And where did that occur? Where did that sighting occur?
This was in Newark, New Jersey on Locke Street and also Central Avenue. So right at the intersection, there is a subway right across from the...
Mott, M-O-T-T?
No, Locke, like John Locke.
Locke, L-O-C-K-E?
Right. And then the name of the name of the cross street is called Central Avenue.
So you saw... Now, what would Mark Zuckerberg, a multi-billionaire, why would he be at the corner of Locke Street and Central Avenue?
It kind of blew my mind. I have no clue as to why they would have been there. I think it was predicated on the idea that I had found Mr. Lucky's father's phone number on Nuber.com, a public repository website. And maybe they thought that was disrespectful in some way, and they just wanted to track me or sort of,
yeah.
I don't know
Now,
exactly what that meant.
Do you think that this could have been an induced experience whereby they remotely transmitted to you an induced experience of seeing Mark Zuckerberg and John, how do you spell Carmack?
Yeah, kind of like the Mack truck, C-A-R-M-A-C-K, Carmack.
Yeah. Could they have remotely induced to you an experience of seeing John Carmack and Mark Zuckerberg?
Well, at the time, I was very much an empiricist. I was very much based in empirical reality, despite having my schizoaffective disorder. So, just as a brief aside, I don't have
okay. What's the name of that
disorder?
Disorder?
It's called schizoaffective disorder. Like it's schizophrenia with an affective component of depression. Affective, like affective.
Affective disorder. Is that in the DSM?
Yes, that was in the DSM-3, 4, and 5, I believe.
Yeah, and are you on medication for that?
Yes, I've been on antipsychotics since 2015, but intermittently from 2015 until 2017, and then yes. But
yeah. So could that not have been an hallucination or a manipulation by remote directed energy weapons interacting with the medication and your disorder to create those, an impression of Mark Zuckerberg and John Carmack at the corner of Locke Street and Central Avenue on
Um,
November 3rd to 4th, 2016
I
in Newark, New Jersey?
I would say probably not, because it occurred on multiple occasions where these events had occurred where I had seen them several times, but John Carmack in particular, he was driving different types of Ford F-150 trucks, and if such things are reducible to that, then I guess then there would be no sort of trail of evidence that would come about later on where such rental records could be ascertained to have been rented in their names, and not obviously not fabricated or forged records, but ones that were
Yeah.
legitimately produced during those days. But
Okay.
I am of the
So,
mind.
so did you take any steps to ascertain what the public schedules, what the schedule of Mark Zuckerberg was on those dates, or what
No,
the
no,
schedules of John Carmack were on those dates? For example, Mr. Zuckerberg has an office in Palo Alto, California.
right.
You could have called their office and said, I just want to, you know, or gone up on the website or something, or just ascertain what
So
schedule.
so could you reframe that? Do you mean like, was I trying to actively figure out what they were doing, or do you mean like to try and explain what I had seen?
Well, i.e., if one can do a reasonable search and ascertain that either Mark Zuckerberg or John Carmack was elsewhere, then you would have to go into alternative explanations
Right.
for the phenomenology that you experienced. You see,
I would
you
I
see
would
what
say,
I'm saying?
yeah.
Because uh, uh, there are alternative. There are if you're dealing with targeted, since you have taken on very powerful organizations who are into targeting
Right.
uh, and trafficking, and there are technologies for remote influencing,
Hmm.
which include remote targeting and remote influencing, and especially with people's with an affective disorder under the DSM. I happen to have um, a a psychotherapy degree at the master's level, so I have a bit of knowledge in this in this in
Okay,
this regard.
to answer your question more succinctly, then I would say that it could be a possibility, but in the same way that this could be a possibility for anybody then, because anybody walking on that street on that same day, if they had a good recollective memory, could have recalled. And actually, that subway there, if it still has records of such events, has a camera there where it's pointed in an omnidirectional sort of way, where it could have seen. And maybe it's too much of a stretch of the imagination to think that they have such technology that was so advanced and capable back then in 2016. But at some point, it's kind of just like denying empirical belief, then, right? But then I do see your point where it might be
No. I mean, you had a real experience. I'm not
right,
trying to deny your experience. I'm just posing reasonable alternative explanations
okay,
that go into what we can call black ops. Since you're going after black ops, you're going after organizations like Facebook that interact with the CIA and black ops organizations. For example, News Inside Out has in the past years published deep investigative reporting on the origins of Facebook in the CIA.
right,
So Facebook is basically a public-private interactive front for the intelligence agencies. Okay,
right,
it's formally it's a Delaware corporation formed in 2004, but functionally it's an interactive face. It's a database founded by DARPA and then spun out to a puppet called Mark Zuckerberg. Okay,
Right. That's the kind of public-private face, as it were. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And so they deal with a lot of technologies, including that, the ability to create pseudo events or psionic events for individuals uh, to sort of distract them or lead them down, false memory holes. One of which could be a false sighting of Mark Zuckerberg at the corner of Lock and Central on November 3rd and 4th, 2016. I'm not disputing that you didn't uh, that you that you didn't see something there. I'm just questioning uh, what you saw, that it probably was a black ops. You were probably
Right.
targeted
Maybe.
with a black ops rather than a surveillance, an actual unlawful surveillance by the actual persons of John Carmack and Mark Zuckerberg, who themselves are highly guarded reptilian personalities who
Mm.
are not allowed to go out of certain zones by their
So,
handlers. You
so
follow
I
what I'm saying?
Okay, so maybe that might be called into question because, I was pretty much astonished at the time and I didn't think of taking a picture, which I should have. I kind of stubbed myself in the toe afterwards and I was kind of like beating myself over it. I was like, I should have taken a picture of those license plates or something or the people there because then I would have had some sort of at least evidence that I could recall and go back to. But then it would have been reducible to this sort of interplay there where if they do have access to my phones, they can just readily delete it anyway. So it's kind of this game of cat and mouse with these sort of black op agencies or these pseudo fronts of these intelligence groups, I guess, in terms of what people really think of them as being these public corporations or private corporations, but really are being puppeteered or marionetted by these sort of these big government agencies. But fundamentally, I was a little bit of one step. I was like a one step ahead of them somehow because I was able to always get a backup of my documents in insulated drives and USB drives, which they've been trying to destroy as of recently. But here's a kind of counterpoint, a counter attestation in terms of like not this particular incident, but the beginning prior statements, the former statements, where in my next piece in the outline, I say that I also have corroborating evidence in the form of a verbal confession that was given to a Mr. Jonas Krohn. So I found Mr. Jonas Krohn's phone number on truthfinder.com because I saw that he was one of the people leading a quorum against Mark Zuckerberg to oust him as chairman and CEO of Facebook because they believe that he has too much power in terms of the board of directors there. And he basically runs a sort of putsch regime in terms of this kind of this class share voting system where he can essentially control like one or two shares and marionette the entire board and the entire company with just one or two shares and say he has all the control in the company. So Jonas Krohn was leading a quorum of about 68% of outside Facebook investors. And then I found his phone number and I called him and I left him a voicemail. I said, well, listen, if there's anything you can do to help me, I would be highly grateful for that. And then he apparently called me by accident somehow with the phone in his pocket at a party at Facebook Boston or something, or at a bar somewhere like that. And they were having a conversation, Mr. Jonas Krohn and some alleged conspirator or some alleged person who knows mostly about Isabella Santiago's whereabouts and what had actually happened to me. And then I had heard tidbits of the conversation, and Jonas Krohn could attest to the entire conversation himself via subpoena in court, or if anybody really asked him, and if he really told the truth. And I do believe him. I believe he's a good person. I believe he has no essential sort of malicious intent here. So what I heard in the conversation was that when I was hearing this by accident, presumably with Jonas Krohn's phone in his pocket, talking to this inside man at Facebook who was telling Jonas Krohn all this information, was that it didn't necessarily happen that way. And then there was kind of like static and kind of just rumbling and like Isabel Santiago. Well, she went to Cuba and then she was there in Illinois and then she was there in California and then there's this sort of logical deduction there that even if this guy is making up stories, they know something about Isabella Santiago and they know that I'm looking for her too. So there's obviously some sort of complicity there in terms of how they're interacting with this and me in trying to investigate them and how the girl has been moved and sex trafficked. So clearly she's not there to be picking roses and like cutting pizzas or whatever. I'm not trying to be facetious to you, Alfred, but she's not there to be drawing paintings and being a model actress or something. She's there for just one purpose only, and I think that's just primarily to be a sex slave. So But the kind of key piece of information there that was given to Jonas Krohn was it didn't necessarily happen that way. And what I heard most succinctly was that she was in California, she was in Cuba, and she was in Illinois too. So clearly, she was only born and raised in in Illinois, and she never knew about anybody from California or nothing like that or anything like that. I'm sorry. And clearly, how does a girl who's so poor and destitute, working as a barista at Starbucks, the love of my life, who I'd met and online and wanted to be with for the rest of my life, and have her move here, have any sort of money or ascertain any sort of amount of money besides literally being a sex slave for Facebook to even go to California in the first place? So I mean, that can be called into scrutiny as well too. So I just want your opinion on that. What do you think about Jonas Krohn's testimony?
Okay. Um, yeah. So this is a conversation that you overheard on a phone on his cell phone, because he was carrying his cell phone and his cell phone called you inadvertently, and so he was being briefed, but his cell phone called you, and so you inadvertently overheard that conversation. Is that what happened?
Well, maybe I'm being a little facetious about it. Maybe he accidentally pressed a button on his phone, and I heard the
Well,
conversation. If you know what
well,
I mean.
I I have had that happen to me, and I think that what happens there is that a white hat in Intel triggers his cell phone so that you overhear that conversation.
Right. And then since the United States is a two-party recording state federally, I could not record the conversation, especially without this third
Right.
party in
Now,
interplay as well too. So
now, I I just want to get your frame of reference. Facebook is a Delaware corporation. It was incorporated, I believe, in 2004. Why do you say that Facebook is sex trafficking, Isabel? I mean, I just want to get the mechanics, okay? Just,
yeah, so
yeah,
it's
is this like, and is this the actual employees of Facebook are running an illicit sex trafficking organization, or is this organized crime associated with Facebook, i.e., organized crime operates within Facebook, spots people on Facebook,
right.
kidnaps them, and grabs them. They spot Facebook members, and then they kidnap them into sex trafficking. That's what you're saying. Is that the case?
No, it's more of the former, where it's like it seems to be this sort of innocent interplay between technical sourcers and recruiters and people heads up in the company who are giving into their sort of licentious and craven depravities. And they see that somebody might be of sexual interest to them, but they have no particular value in the company, so they go ahead and brush that under the table and act as if it's business as usual. But there's no sort of and my formal belief, a sort of organized crime syndicate known as Facebook, where you have people who are like, a mafioso or something, or you have like a Don boss or whatever the terminology is, like a Caputo or whatever the terminology is in the mafia or something. No, it seems to be more of like this sort of very subliminal, implicit sort of structure where it's like there's an informal understanding there that that they're doing this on purpose to people, not only to me but to other people, assumingly so. But I would
So,
like
so this
Alfred, can
is
I say
like
something?
what you're saying is that you have found that within Facebook, there's almost like a gang stalking organization of a sexual nature.
Right. It's this very sort of kind of very sort of intrepid kind of intrusive and subversive kind of organization that is kind of just weaving in and out of these sort of groups of people there, and they see that through their sources and recruiters and through its associates there on Facebook as well too, and people within the company who have this sort of kind of hush hush kind of discussions about who's sexually attracted to them and who's not, and they can go ahead and leverage their position and power in life to basically say, you can come live at my house for free, and then you can just do this and that. But then once they're there, they hold them hostage like sex slaves. And then if they try and go to the government, they've got Palantir, they've got Oculus, they've got Anduril, they've got the federal law enforcement on their side, and then nobody really believes the victims here.
Okay. So that's organized crime. So that's how organized crime works.
Well, I'm just alleging that this might be the case.
Yeah.
This is what I
No, no,
wanted to add,
right.
Alfred. This is what I wanted to add. I want to be entirely honest here. I'm an entirely innocent victim here. I have no clue of where Isabella Santiago really is.
No,
And
no,
they're
right.
right. And then she sent me emails, allegedly so, from a burner phone that she had received, saying that they're trying to use the telepathic powers on me. They're trying to use the tunnels to move people. And the email header was from a girl named Izzy Santos. And then she said, please come rescue me. And I was like, I can't rescue like a vigilante. I have no power or authority to. And I can even pull up the email chain for you that I have in my email. I'll send it to you, or I'll probably post it in the YouTube comments. But the comments were like, they're trying to use their psychic powers to influence people. They use the tunnels to move people. What else? Isabella Santiago, presumably in this email chain, said that, you know, they want me to know that they want you to know that they have me here, that they're holding me hostage. They want you to know that. And like, then she said, because I posted the messages on Facebook trying to get law enforcement to help me out, that I had exposed her and that they're going to take the phone and probably force things on her. So what I wanted to make clear here, just give me like a brief kind of 30-second aside, is
Oh,
that,
yeah.
you know, is that I formally don't understand what's happening here, and I'm very much an innocent victim. I'm just trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together, where my wife had been taken away from me, and, you know, the love of my life. But here's the kind of kicker in all of this. So I was going to get a little bit further into this. So can I keep going further here? So deeper into this, because this is a very strange story involving me in my life and the kind of telepathic abilities that I do have myself.
Please, please, please go ahead. And the only reason that I'm asking questions
Mm-hmm.
is to help hone in on other alternative
Right.
explanations. But I think that we're really getting someplace, because I think that from a probable cause point of view, I know that you have gone to the FBI, and I believe that you have established probable cause that there is a criminal organization operating within Facebook. So over to you.
Sorry, I'm just taking a vaporizer hit, some nicotine there. So I'm just going to briefly skim through this outline here, because I want to be kind of coherent with time and have enough time to have some sort of discussion with you, impromptu at least, and sort of our brief discussions about these sort of things happening and the sort of circumstantiality of what's happening. But, you know, so these telepathic abilities that I have include, and I don't want to be too vague, or no, sorry, too kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Obscene here about this, but I have a form of like telepathy that includes being telepathically clued into events that are going to happen around me, having the ability to have this sort of sexual telepathy where I actually feel people having sex within my body. And I've had this for about 8 years, and for the past 8 years of my life. And it came as a function of having the schizoaffective disorder, but I never had it before in my life, before the age of 18 years old. And I've never taken advantage of it. Nobody particularly likes me that much. Isabella Santiago was the only woman who really cared about me. So I really felt her ever having an orgasm ever, because she was usually going to work or doing something like that. But, you know, the thing was, I started feeling the sensation in the year 2011 to 2012, and I wanted to prove to myself empirically as a scientist, like, is this something that I'm really feeling in my body as a function of like other people having sex, and I'm feeling that? So I spoke to Isabella Santiago, and I'm sorry, I don't want to be too lewd on your live stream, but I told her to do this experiment where presumable things would be done. Like, for example, she would pleasure herself to me. I don't want to use the explicit term there. She would pleasure herself to me, and then she would not tell me during the entire week of the experiment when she was doing it. But then I would go ahead and text her and call her, and then she would confirm with me whether I was really feeling the sensation or not. And then she reached out to me and said, "Wow, this is almost insane. Like, I can't believe that you have an ability like this." And I've confirmed it with another girl named Valentina since then. I really talk to women. I'm just trying to find my wife. But, you know, I have this ability to feel these telepathic sorts of sexual sensations that I have plenty of evidence for, and that I've reached out to every research institution in the United States of America, which can be substantiated to a long call record history in terms of my call record history and mass Twitter campaign of tweets I sent out trying to get a research institution to test me on favorable and amenable terms in regards to my natural human rights. So basically, I wanted to have a research institution work with me to prove that this is one-to-one causally related with the sensations that I'm having, so that people don't keep reducing me to psychopathy. When Isabella Santiago knows the truth, this girl named Valentina knows the truth, and plenty of other women and men around the world who informally know the truth by experimenting on me directly, and then me complaining about the sensations, know that I'm literally feeling these things, but I'm being suppressed everywhere. I'm being suppressed on Twitter. I'm being suppressed on Facebook. My Facebook accounts are all completely deleted because I was complaining about being telepathically raped by my wife vicariously. I was complaining about this on YouTube, and my YouTube live streaming was shut down based on copyright infringement, which I believe is a kind of a fair claim for them to go ahead and shut down my channel. But on Twitch, when I was live streaming such events, they completely shut down my channel. They shut down everything for violation of terms of service based on me trying to harm myself or something. That was the allegation that they had made on Twitch, but there was no sort of allegation that I was going to harm myself. It was a clear suppression campaign. Once people started joining in the stream, about 15 to 20 to 30 people started joining in the stream, and once it started getting popular, Twitch immediately cracked down on it and shut it down. So, I mean, do you have any comments about that, Alfred?
Well, you were, I just want to see that I understand. You were broadcasting telepathically and people were joining in. And is that the case?
Well, no, I don't do any form of broadcasting like remote viewing at all. It kind
Yeah.
of just, the sensations come to me, and it's like,
Yeah.
I'm kind of like a receiver for it. I don't
Right.
understand how this is supposed to really
Right.
work.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand. And so these social media are run by corporations, you know, Facebook, which are come out of the draconian sector. I mean, DARPA, which and CIA, which developed Facebook, are draconian organizations. They're from the Draco sector. So they would shut you down because you're broadcasting human soul frequencies. You see what
Right.
I'm saying? From a soul point of view,
And
you were engaging in soul broadcasts.
right.
It was
And
your soul that was broadcasting.
yeah, and this is like a particularly positive kind of frequency that's resonating for me, because I've
Right.
always been advocate for peace and sustainability and productivity in my life and
Yeah.
moving forward. And I never really wanted to have this ability, but I guess if I had to have it, then I would never really abuse it or use it against anybody else.
No, no,
In the
right.
same way that I don't like to
That
have it used against
that's
me.
what that the 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 Draco element wants to keep the human element enslaved and torture it for the loosh, for the suffering. That's the basic equation that's going on the planet at the moment.
Right.
So,
Where do you
yeah.
think like the Anunnaki and stuff fit into this? Because I used to write about the Anunnaki in my book Meta
Oh,
Paradise.
yeah, it's the Draco, Orion Gray, and Anunnaki reptilians that the U.S. signed all of the all of the secret treaties with, that
Mhm.
set up the basic torture machine, that set up the United States as the the torture proconsul for the planet. So anyway, so that is the exopolitical situation. So
Mhm.
you're not abnormal. You're a normal human that is incarnating on a Draco planet, rather into a Draco nation, which is the USA. It's a Draco nation. And so we're in the process of liberating the Draco nation, the United States, which essentially was taken over during the 20th century by these treaties.
Yeah, I think it's kind of ironic, because I was thinking about this the other day about how the Illuminati always praise this sort of pyramidal symbol, but
Yeah,
at the top of the Illuminati symbol is of the pyramid is the Eye of Providence, which is the Eye of God, which I think is
yeah,
really ironic, because it's one step above the 13th step and nobody can reach it, right? And but the thing is that you always have to be an account of God. And literally, this might be something that can be reducible to what you had said before of these sort of targeted individual telepathic or sort of technological broadcasts. But
yeah.
I literally had a vision of Jesus Christ, and 19 other witnesses were there as well, where I was like multi-bilocated and translocated into different places in space and time. And there was a sort of multi-hour dialogue that had occurred, which were presumably Mark Zuckerberg, and I'm not sure if this is reducible to some sort of delusiosity or to some sort of transubstantiation, where I had been in multiple places at once, but it was almost as lucid as if I had been seeing through my own eyes. And the experience was about a few hours long, and I guess I'll send you the link to that document. Did you read that document, The Private Revelation of Jesus Christ?
Yes, I I have it here now. Can that be shared?
Yeah, I would like for you to share it in the YouTube comments, but what's your sort of general sort of idea about what I had spoken about there? It's a very long document, but my sort of kind of general abstract of it was that we had seen Jesus Christ, and he had materialized himself in such a way that it seemed almost to me to be like appealing to my sort of religious upbringing and the way I had grown up as a child. And but to me, what seemed strange about it was that it wasn't particularly conducive to their sort of argument where Jesus had agreed with me in terms of justice being distributed towards them. So I'm very much very susceptible to these sorts of attacks, and I'm also very susceptible to, kind of reduction psychopathy arguments telepathically, where people are constantly harassing me and abusing me all the time. And I'm just some guy who lives in his apartment all the time. And just tries to live his life and is trying to move on with life, but I'm being held back by so many people for essentially doing nothing wrong. And I don't know if it's really the Lord speaking to us or if that was God, but I hope it was, because I have a new renewed faith in Jesus and God, and I hope that really means something to anybody, because I've been reading the word of the Lord in the Bible too, and I think that it means a lot to me now, especially in the context of justice and morality and the good morals that one should have, and the fact that those are really good moral imperatives to live by if you think about them.
Yeah, I think that you have had and you continue to experience genuine multidimensional experiences, and in these dimensions, the the multidimensional intelligences often appear in terms of archetypes that are in your conscious and that your subconscious or your conscious can interpret, and so yeah. Yeah, so you've had very, very, very good, and so that is, think of that as very protective vis-a-vis the criminal, the probable cause. I'll put it in legal terms. See, you've established
Right.
probable cause for a criminal sex trafficking organization existing within the Delaware Corporation of Facebook, which is uh, uh, tacitly allowed and sustained by management and employees.
Yes, and this is also,
Yeah,
I'd like to remind viewers that this is also an allegation. This is just
yeah,
my accusation
allegation. Yeah,
based
yeah,
on,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And no, but I think that you've established probable cause based on the messages that you've received from your girlfriend and
right,
her disappearance,
right,
and based on the fact that you have approached the FBI with this evidence and that you have offered to cooperate with them both in writing and uh, and on a volunteer basis to cooperate in any investigation of this probable cause sex trafficking ring within Facebook. That would be my assessment. Now, do you want to go and continue with the outline?
yeah. There's only one brief section that's left, and we're gonna have actually a lot of time left over to kind of just have a brief discussion about this.
Oh,
But
oh,
we,
oh,
but I,
okay. So
yeah.
go ahead. Can, can continue with the outline.
Okay. But I wanted to say one thing that, just as an addendum to what you said. This was always an establishment of probable cause that I believe that I had a preponderance of evidence for to establish a probable cause to investigate and would warrant more search warrants, no pun intended, or arrest warrants. And I would like to clear the air here. I'm not a federal informant that's federally recognized as being protected by the United States government, but I'm an informant in a technical sense where I've submitted this information solely just about Facebook, because Facebook is the only corporation that's allegedly bothering me, and the only sort of people that are allegedly bothering me. I don't bother anybody, and nobody else bothers me, and I haven't been bothered by almost anybody in my life to this extent, where I've gone to the police even to report such a crime, or even gone to the federal government, or to even so many agencies like I have done here, believing that I had a just cause, a probable cause, as a matter of fact, and a preponderance of evidence to do so. So I'm going to continue with the outline here. So on October 15th at 6 a.m., an investigation into what may have been happening in my neighborhood around me has revealed that the United States Drug Enforcement Agency had conducted a raid of the house across the street from mine with about 10 undercover law enforcement officer vehicles, along with a DEA van/truck, at 6 a.m. on October 15, 2019. The raid had began earlier, but I had awoken in simultaneity, unconsciously, out of bed to the fact that there was a significant event occurring outside, worthy of peeking through the blinds, without advanced foresight or warning in terms of a notice via any form of substantive communication, via text message, phone call, email, verbal conversation, etc. Depicted here within, and I'll post this link to these images there into the YouTube chat and to the YouTube comments later. But there's 3 images here of basically like a DEA van, undercover vehicles out here. And just to recap, I had no sort of prior forewarning that they were going to be there. I literally just woke up out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning, and there was a telepathic cluing in. There's something happening outside. So this is a kind of another proof of my telepathy, where people like to reduce me to psychopathy and call me insane, but I literally have multiple proofs within this one document and all the documents that I do have of some sort of transubstantiated, sort of even metaphysical, as it were, something that can't be really reducible to a mechanistic sort of understanding of telepathy, or something in general that is kind of defies causality and temporality. So depicted here within are the images from the DEA raid, which I had no prior forewarning of, that I had awoken to in simultaneity as a function of telepathic cluing in. I have no formal knowledge of whether or not this DEA raid was a function of an investigation into a possible assassination attempt in my life, allegedly so, where Facebook may have placed assassins across the street from me, or these were presumably street criminals whom we had never seen living in that house ever. Multiple witnesses in terms of long-term residents of the area. I have been here for 7 years. I have never seen the people who consistently wait outside of this house and are constantly in and out, presumably selling illicit narcotics, via logical deduction of the images listed here within. I testified to that this statement here as being the whole truth and nothing but the truth, in terms of the literal statements made here within concerning this particular investigation of these neighbors whom no one had seen before, who had moved in recently across the street. So this was the same day I went to the FBI and submitted a report, kind of coincidentally enough, for the first time in person to a law enforcement agency that didn't have me immediately detained and thrown into a psychiatric ward for alleging what I believe to be the material facts of the alleged Facebook conspiracy. So this is the last little bit here of my outline. So I open the floor to you and for some questions and a brief discussion. But I wanted to say finally, Alfred, I'm sincerely grateful for you allowing me to have the platform to plead my case before the people of the world on this public platform on YouTube, where I have been so suppressed by the media, conspiracy shows, social media platforms, and other outlets to express my trepidation and immense pain I have been through. I feel like I will be vindicated and justified for the pain I have been through. The suffering, the trials, and the road to glory in the name of God and the highest are yet to begin. And sincerely, myself, John Lasheras. So I'm opening the floor to you for questions and discussion, anything that you want to talk about.
Yeah, well, I I think that I'm going to publish the documents that you've sent me, which are very substantive, and I think that in in the in the presentation that you've made, which is now 47 minutes and counting, you've established probable cause uh, that uh, 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 that uh, there appears to be uh, some sort of a sex trafficking organization within Facebook Inc., a Delaware corporation, which seems to have kidnapped your girlfriend, wife, and uh, which may be trafficking others as well and operating in that function, and which may be carrying out uh, other deeds. And apparently, Mark Zuckerberg, uh, I watched his statements, live statements recently about having a private meeting with Donald John Trump. And Mark Zuckerberg was extremely evasive about what went on during that meeting and what he stated. And both of those individuals are extremely self-dealing.
Right.
They evade legal. They evade duly elected legislative bodies.
Right.
And uh, Mark Zuckerberg would not answer what he had told Donald John Trump.
Right.
And so I think that you're doing a public service. You are something of, oh, I would call you uh, a, uh, a whistleblower and a public witness.
Well, thank you, Alfred. That
Yeah.
means a lot to me.
So now the issue is, uh, you went to the FBI obviously with the intent of asking them to take action. Now you now uh, and we're putting this word out. What action would you like to see coming out of this?
Well,
Uh, Putting this body of evidence out. Uh, are you asking for there are pro bono attorneys who who take on cases on a pro bono basis, and that is, uh, uh, you know, pro bono for the public good. Uh, uh, do you, are you putting this out for just for the public good? Are you asking for your girlfriend to be located? Could you put out a series of uh, wishes or desires or affirmations that you would like to see coming out of this evidence
well,
that you're now putting out into the public domain?
Well, I had listed a list of of conspiratorial charges and charges that I believe would be possibly levied against these people for what they had done just against me in terms of the hacking and the selling of my wife's property, her mother's property and father's property, where their arbitrage had occurred in California and in Illinois, and there was tax evasion from that as well too. So clearly, I believe that I'm trying to pursue a sort of party plaintiff status where the United States would prosecute the alleged conspirators or complicit conspirators where they would need to. And then once they had the adequate evidence from search warrants, I would go ahead and via a pro bono lawyer as a plaintiff myself, go ahead and file charges against the people who were complicit against me. And then I would be a star witness in a sort of party plaintiff case with the United States. And this would be a very long and protracted out sort of legal proceeding where basically, the truth is sifted out and sieved out the search warrants, because the thing is that there needs to be a good establishment of probable cause to go after, such a big target like that, in terms of, in not really a target, but the actual perpetrators or alleged perpetrators of these crimes. And the corporation has to come first. So if there's arbitrage going on, if there's tax evasion, securities fraud, insider trading, if there's stuff like that going on, then I can't be privy to being a plaintiff to that, because I'm not a person, I'm not a sovereign entity that is the entire United States of America that deals with tax evasion. I just collect taxes for Singular Technologies Corporation, but I don't necessarily deal in how they're distributed, how they're functionally spent. So it's not really up to a pro bono lawyer in that sense, in terms of the party plaintiff case. But then what I was hoping for the government to do would be to pursue this party plaintiff status and to get these search warrants where the evidence comes out. And then once the evidence comes out from these search warrants and subpoenas, they basically unveil themselves in terms of what they had done, because they can't hide from the search warrants where they are searching for certain things. And then the evidence appears, and then I could be, as the plaintiff, going ahead and pursuing a much more substantiated case in terms of my defense, in terms of my defense of going after them, in terms of righting the wrongs that had happened to me, in terms of a pro bono lawyer relationship. But the point of being here today on the show is mostly certainly about dissemination, getting this information across to people, and making sure that people know about what kind of things they're signing up for when they go on social media, and to know who they're applying to when they're applying to positions or workplaces where they think they're going to be safe and secure, when they don't particularly know that much about the corporation, like I had not known. And I had so innocently and naively assumed that these people were going to be my friends, they're going to help me, they're going to really be conducive to the team spirit of doing a good job at work. And all this has caused me is emotional trauma and suffering and rape and torture and abuse. And I just want to get my message out there. I don't want anybody to do any sort of active protesting or anything. But I would like for one thing to happen, and that is, maybe this might be too much to ask of you or anybody else, but if I disappear, or if they try and hurt me, or if they press false charges against me and I go to prison, I would like for, maybe if it's not too much to ask of you, or maybe like the targeted individual community or the people who are part of this sort of, collaborative network of whistleblowing, to kind of advocate for me for my release, and advocate for me as being a good-willed and good, a person who had done many good works in their life, and had been, an innocent person from the very beginning, who just wanted to be with their wife. And I think that's not anything that's too much to protest against.
Uh, of course, there, there, just your statement belies the fact of the tremendous pressure and targeting that you've been under for these years. How can people get in communication with you, John?
Yeah, so I have actually, this is kind of what I had researched for in our preliminary discussions before. I researched to see if my Twitter account was shadow banned, and it was. So you can contact me via my phone number, 551-482-6232, which is publicly available online. Please call me like at convenient times, like during
Yeah,
the evening.
yeah. Could you say that again, please?
Yeah, it's 551-482-6232. Or you can email me at john.lasheras@gmail.com. And I
Right.
also have a Twitter,
551-482.
6232.
Perfect.
And my email is john.lasheras@gmail.com.
Yeah, and we'll put this in the
Right.
article and in the video description. And no, and of course, you're part of our community now. I think that number one, you're coming forward as a targeted individual of what we could say a probable cause, possible Facebook trafficking organization. If we can put it in those terms, I mean, maybe this will bring other people to come forth.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm kind of
And
hoping for.
what's really interesting is this. I've been over the years very active on Facebook at sort of at the heyday before I got super targeted on Facebook. I probably at, was uh, administrator of over 100 groups in diverse areas. 5 Planet Gemini that I am, and networker. And about 3 weeks ago, all of a sudden, I got shut down,
Yeah.
and I got blocked on Facebook, and I've been prohibited from, I cannot post, share, or repost anything in groups on Facebook until December 9th, 2019. Today's December 4th. I think that all that happened because you and I had scheduled and had been going back and forth sharing all of the evidence.
Right.
And I think that the criminal organization within Facebook came in and shut down all of my accounts. And I had been a major Facebook contributor for
Right.
many years, over 100 groups. I founded many groups there
Mhm.
because of that.
Yeah.
That's what I think. It's just reptilians. It's these dark reptilians. Now, the good news is that their time is over on planet Earth, and this is like their final death rattle. And that's it.
That's a nice characterization.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, um, Alfred, I was going to say one last thing, just on my end. I think it's kind of really a shame what happened to Facebook, at least allegedly so, because I used to have this vision of Facebook. I was kind of indoctrinated in the propaganda of, the Mark Zuckerberg cult and the young hipster kind of attitude of the people at Facebook. And I always assumed that Facebook was a place for families to meet and integrate, and for families in the world and people across the world to connect. But in reality, what's happened to me in the past few years, allegedly so, has been dividing not only my family against me, against me, Isabella's family, and everybody else who we're associated with, but it's ripping families apart. It's become really a sad thing, because I used to have such a great vision and hope for Facebook, and that was renewed by Oculus VR when they first came out with their VR headsets and their remote controllers and stuff for VR video gaming. And I didn't particularly go on Facebook for about from up until, so I was on Facebook from 2008 until 2012, and then I stopped using Facebook from 2012 up until 2017. So I was pretty much disconnected from the entire social media scene, because I knew it was pretty bad for me. It was pretty much a very malicious playground of, like, not necessarily the people who were there, because they didn't really particularly care about me, because there is other functions to Facebook, like going on groups and stuff like that, news media. But then once I figured out what they had done with my wife, they basically sealed the deal for me in terms of the people that work there. So why do I even want to work there now, let alone try and make a deal with them? Like, it's kind of like making a deal with the devil, right? You're kind of just going to get, no
Right.
pun intended, screwed in the end.
Got it. Got it. And yeah, so we've put out proposals. You can go to positivefuture.info that big tech out of social media, and they become consumer cooperatives
Right.
controlled by we, the consumer,
Where
so
we own the
that,
data.
yeah, so this wouldn't happen again. I really want to thank you for your courage and your determination and your focus in having come through all of this as the witness,
Right.
and you know coming through and brought out the probable cause evidence, and now offering it to the public, and this will be published, and uh, it'll be out there, and and then it'll be seeing the light of day.
So,
And
Alfred,
yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just have one question. So, am I allowed to interact with your community viewers in terms of comments there on YouTube? And you don't have to necessarily
please.
censor. You don't have to necessarily censor people, but I would like to discuss with people if they have any sort of questions or
Oh
dialogue.
yeah, no, 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 in fact, the more that you interact, then the more it happens,
Right.
you know because then you interact, and you can get things started.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Alfred. It was a really great show that we had here, and I felt like this is a great relief off my shoulders, and not necessarily putting it on you, but going ahead and stating to the world that I now have some sort of a venue and outlet where I'm not going to be suppressed, and even on my own YouTube, I haven't been suppressed. So I'm actually getting a lot of views on my videos on YouTube, and it's a
Oh,
good
good.
thing, because the information is getting out there, and we're doing good things in terms of helping
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
And
Talk about where's your YouTube channel? Talk about
Um,
your YouTube
the,
channel.
the, the YouTube link is very long because I don't have enough subscribers yet, but you can
Okay.
just YouTube my name, John Lasheras, and it's
Okay.
spelled JohnLasheras, John
Great.
Lasheras on YouTube.
Great. Beautiful. Okay. Well, thank you so much again. And uh, let's put this out there, and then after a little while, let's have you come back again and see, you know, where we are. But let's put out the affirmation that this is going to have some positive changes.
Okay, let's pray to God. I hope so.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you
Okay,
so
then.
much, Alfred.
Totally.
Okay, bye.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.